Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I want to talk about why I've left the United States and I never plan on returning. Some people have been asking about this video and here it is today. If you don't know my channel, I left the United States about 6 years ago. I moved to Spain. I was living in Spain for around 5 years. I loved it there. And now I moved to Poland. And Poland is also a great country. I'm really enjoying Poland, the beautiful nature behind me, you can see. So what are the differences between Europe and the United States? And this is one of the big things I want to talk about today. One of the big differences is safety. Safety in the United States and crime. Let's talk about that compared to Europe. Now, crime in the US is a big problem. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, actually. Originally, so I had to be always cautious about where I was going. Even in the suburbs, you're not always safe. As you know, you can be a victim of crime anywhere. There are carjackings, there are robberies, there are break-ins. I've actually experienced break-ins myself when I lived in Detroit, and houses were broken into, properties were broken into, cars were stolen. We've had several cars stolen. Even in the suburbs, we've had cars stolen. So this is something you have to worry about. In Europe, this is not really a thing. It is very safe. Spain is a very safe country, but Poland is one of the safest countries in Europe, and they have a top level of safety here. You can walk around at any time of day or night and you feel safe. In fact, many young women, you'll see them walking around at all hours. So that actually shows you it is a very safe country with low crime. So another reason I moved to Europe from the US is the gun crisis. So as we know, the gun crisis is a big problem in the United States. There are more guns than people actually in the US, if you can believe it. It is a major problem. We have gun crimes every day, just about, shootings. And not only that, they are mass shootings at times. So you could be anywhere. You could be at a concert, you could be at a movie theater, you can even be at a school, and you could be gunned down. It is just horrible. And now they teach children in school, even in elementary school, how to hide if there is a gunman, active gunman. It is just craziness. They've actually had shootings recently in supermarkets. So you could be in a supermarket shopping and you could be a victim of a shooting. Also, there are tons of gangs in the US in major cities, and there could be a shootout anytime, and you could be just an innocent bystander, and that happens just about every day in the United States. It is absolutely madness, and there is no will to change it. There is no will to change it, and in fact, we have a constitutional right to guns, and there are a lot of people that don't want to give up their guns. We've tried to ban certain guns, certain assault rifles, things like that. It doesn't seem to have worked. So it is a major problem. Here in Europe, you don't have that issue. It is very difficult to buy a gun here. Not everybody has a gun, of course, and the people that do, they have to go through many levels of security. They also have to go through a psychological exam, which I was surprised to learn in most European countries. So as you see, it is very difficult to get a gun, and it can only be used for hunting normally, or if you're obviously a policeman or a military person. Okay, the next reason I moved to Europe from the US would be the homeless crisis. We have a homeless crisis in America. You probably have heard about it if you watch the news in America. We have a huge homeless crisis. We have homeless people in major cities, and they are sleeping on the streets. Now, to be fair, I did see some of this in Spain, but not to the level that I saw in the US. There will be people in wintertime, even in Detroit, out in the cold, and you feel so bad for them. And there are shelters, but many don't want to go to shelters. They either have drug problems or they just don't like shelters. They say they're unsafe. I've heard that from different women. They have women's shelters as well. So homelessness is a big problem, and not only for people that are really poor, it also hit the middle class. It hit the middle class, and especially with this COVID, when they had the epidemic, and it caused a lot of people to become homeless because they couldn't work and they couldn't earn money, and they lost their homes. And that's happened to a lot of people in the US. They lost their business, they lost their homes. So many are even sleeping in their cars, and you hear stories about it, and it's absolutely tragic. So it's just a big issue in the US. and it's not so much here in Europe. They seem to have figured out the problem in most countries here in Europe, and they have ways to help these people, and they also have better ways to treat mental illness, which is a big problem in the US as well, and it causes homelessness. So another big reason I left the US is the drug epidemic. The drug epidemic in America is out of control. It is taking hundreds of thousands of lives every year, and it's not only the street drugs like heroin, cocaine, crack, methamphetamines or meth, crystal meth. It is all the drugs that were prescribed by doctors. There was actually a big scheme in America many years ago that the pharmaceutical companies, they paid doctors to prescribe these opioids for pain, and many people didn't even need the opioids, and they're very addictive. So you have middle-class people, even rich people sometimes being prescribed these, and when they didn't need them and they become addicted, you can easily become addicted to these opioids and you will be hooked on them, and many people have lost everything chasing this high from the opioids. They cannot quit, so then they end up switching to the street drugs like heroin because it's cheaper than it and gives a similar high. So it's just a huge problem. I've seen documentaries about it in the US. It is so sad. Also, we have this crystal meth in the South mostly that is really bad, and we also have the crack cocaine, which is bad in poor neighborhoods like Detroit. You often see people smoking crack cocaine, or I won't say you often see them, but they are. And I've seen people acting just insanely. And even at night, I saw a guy one time. I was driving in Detroit and he was fighting someone that wasn't there. He was having a fight with someone that wasn't even there. There was no one there. So it just shows you the level that these drugs are and the grip that they have, and they cause people to rob people. They cause people to go into prostitution. So the drug epidemic is a major factor in the US, and is also fueling the cartels in Mexico because they are supplying a lot of the drugs to the US, so it's making the cartels rich and powerful, and that has caused a lot of chaos in Mexico. And there is no end in sight to the drug epidemic, unfortunately, in America. Okay, another reason why I moved to Europe from the United States is the healthcare. Healthcare is not universal in America. Some Europeans don't even know this. I've been to South America when I stayed there for a while because I am a world traveler, and people there thought the US had universal healthcare. No, we don't. We don't. Chile did when I was there, Chile, and also European countries almost, I think they all have it. It is known as a right here in Europe to have universal health care, to be covered. But in America, that's not the case. So if you need a very expensive surgery, or your child does, you may have insurance. It may cover some of it, but the rest of it may not be covered, and it may wipe you out financially. And that is an issue that people face. And not only that, it is the cost of drugs in America. They are insanely overpriced compared to Europe, and the prices in Europe are much lower, as well as hospital visits. A hospital visit in US can run you an insane amount of money. There are videos on YouTube about it. People staying in a hospital even for overnight or for a weekend can end up with bills that are tens of thousands of dollars. It is just crazy, with the same bill in Europe being substantially lower, if not a fraction of the cost of hospitals in the US, or stays or surgery or whatever medical procedure you need. So another reason that I moved to Europe from the US is the racial tension. We have a lot of racial tension in the US. We are a large melting pot. We have a mixture of people, and they don't always get along. And a lot of it has to do with racial tension. I don't want to get into it too much because it's a sticky topic, but we do have a lot of racial tension between Hispanics, Asians, black people, white people, Indian people. It is a big melting pot, and sometimes there is tension between the races. We also have this factor about slavery in America, that it was a big thing, and many black people to this day are still upset about that, and maybe they have a right to be. But so it's just a lot of racial tension, and that actually can cause some issues at times. It can cause crime, hate crimes actually. against another race, going for attacking another race. So it's just an issue that we don't really have in Europe. I don't really see the tension there. I don't hear as much talk about race as well. In America, it's all about being black, being about white. Even the news perpetuates these stereotypes, being Hispanic. So, and people tend to live in their own neighborhoods. They don't integrate as well as they should for a country that is built on a melting pot. And it just does not seem to be working right now in certain instances. Okay, let's talk about another factor here. Why I moved to Europe from the US is the high inflation. The inflation is outrageous in America now. I haven't been back in about 6 years, but I've talked to my family and they're telling me that the prices are skyrocketing in the supermarket. They have doubled, tripled, quadrupled in certain cases. Used to be able to go out to eat at a family restaurant in the US and you could buy a meal for $10, $15, not anymore. It's $20 plus. And even fast food in America now is supposed to be the cheapest food around pretty much, and it is very expensive now. It's no longer cheap and it's no longer easy. So people are actually starting to return to restaurants. They're starting to go back home and learning to cook, which is a great thing because a lot of Americans, you may or may not know this, they do not cook, and many of them don't even know how to cook because the fast food is so prevalent, the restaurants are so prevalent. Like I said, the cheap food before, microwavable meals. So I think maybe it is a good thing that people are learning to cook again. They're actually buying the ingredients, which are not cheap anymore either, but it may be cheaper than going to a restaurant. So high inflation on just about everything. And also the next thing I want to talk about would be the price of housing in US. The price of housing is also skyrocketed, and most young couples cannot afford to buy a house anymore. And that was not always true. That was not always true. For many, many years, a house was affordable, and that was one of the great promises of America, to own a house and to have a family and to do it where you could afford it. But now it is almost unaffordable for many young people. They have to rent, and the rents are also very, very high now because you have a lot of speculators that have bought up the property, and banks, and especially during the pandemic, they bought up properties for dirt cheap that were foreclosed on, and they found out they can rent them for more than they can sell them. So they're just renting them and making a ton of money, and yet they're not affordable for average Americans. Another reason why I moved to Europe from the US is the ultra processed food that makes people sick and obese. You've probably seen the jokes about Americans or heard them, that they're obese, and in Europe I constantly hear that, oh, Americans are fat, they go to McDonald's, and it's not far from the truth many times, especially compared to Europeans. Europeans, they walk a lot, they're usually fitter, they cook a lot, they eat better quality food, they don't eat a lot of processed food like we do in America. In fact, you may or may not know this, but many of the foods sold in America are actually banned in Europe, or some of the chemicals they add to the food, they're actually banned. Some of the dyes, and even like Coca-Cola, for instance, they use this high fructose corn syrup, which is banned in many countries. If you're in Europe or you're in even Mexico, they put cane sugar in the Coca-Cola and it tastes better. Not that I'm saying that that is a good product to drink, but it is healthier than the high fructose corn syrup, which it is unnatural for our body. And the ultra processed food, they've been processed, our bodies don't recognize them, cause inflammation, and they cause obesity, and they cause addiction as well. And also there is a sugar addiction in America with all these sweets. It is crazy. If you go to the supermarket, there are aisles and aisles of sweets and candies and processed food and processed junk. And a lot of times parents give these to the children and they become addicted to them and they crave these things. And you see them at the grocery store, oh mom, please buy this candy bar, please. You know, they're like crying and screaming. You don't really see that in Europe. You don't see that as much anyway, and hardly at all, I would say. And also the fast food industry in America. The fast food industry, honestly, most of fast food is poison for your body. It's poison, it's very low grade food, it's highly processed, and it is just bad for you. It's bad for you, just as you've seen the great documentary Super Size Me, where a man went to McDonald's for 30 days in a row and he just became huge, and he was obese, and he was just had every factor in his body off, obviously, because it's just not good food. It's not healthy food. And we have an abundance in America of fast food. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. You can go to a street corner. There's 4 or 5 fast food restaurants on a street corner. It's crazy. In Europe, you don't see that. You see more restaurants. Okay, we do have some fast food here in Poland, but there's not much. There's a McDonald's, a couple of McDonald's here in Wrocław, where I'm living in Poland, and it's not everywhere. It's not that abundant. It's not that easy to get. And also the fresh bread. In Europe, you're gonna eat fresh bread every day. In America, it's processed, it's in a bag, it lasts for weeks. That's not normal for bread. Bread should last 1 or 2 days, and that is fresh bread. And that's what Europeans always eat, fresh bread. So another issue with the United States is the rate of incarceration. We have the most people. That's right, the US, the land of the free, has the most people locked up, incarcerated, in jails, in prisons of any country in the world. 2 million plus people we have in jail, in prison, incarcerated in some way. And it is just insane. It is just insane. And it's not working. It's not working to stop crime. Here in Europe, we have more of a rehabilitation idea. We try to rehabilitate people that have committed a crime. That is the idea, what I understand. And prisons are not as restrictive. In America, it's all about punishment. Punish them, throw them under the jail. Well, that has not worked, unfortunately. That has not worked, and crime rates are high in America as opposed to Europe, where they are low in most countries and cities, in almost all of them, and especially in a comparison to the United States. So why do we have that many people locked up in America, and why is it? And why are most crimes felonies now? They've been elevated to a high level. Where in Europe, maybe you would get a break, and you would get probably maybe some community service or something, or not. You would not be sent to jail, possibly. But in America, it is all about jail. It is all about punishment. Now, some crimes need to be put in jail. They need to be punished. But we have low-level, for instance, we had many low-level drug dealers, and they were put in jail. They were put in prison, and they're there for many years. And they really are not the root of the whole issue. They're not the ones that are distributing the drugs and so forth. And there are a lot of other people locked up, probably for low-level crime. But anyway, we need a rehaul of our justice system in America. I know Europeans think it is good. There are some things good about it, obviously. We have a right to a jury trial. But why are so many people locked up in America? That is a question we have to ask, and it is not working for us. Okay, so another issue with the United States is the police brutality. We have police brutality in America. I'm sure everybody's seen the videos of the people being beaten. Sometimes it is another race, and they are being beaten and basically tortured in some instances. They have a man with a police officer that had his neck on a black man in the United States, and finally the man died. And this was like huge news across America that was causing riots. And that's when I talked about, again, with the racial tension, that does not help. We had riots across the US, and we had destruction going on, and obviously people were upset, and they should be. They had the right to be upset. And this policeman was found guilty, and he was sentenced, I believe, to murder, some type of murder, 1st degree, 2nd degree murder, or manslaughter, and he's serving time in jail now. And we have this issue with police brutality. Police in America, sometimes they're very aggressive with you if you do not comply to their wishes. So you have to be aware of that. And it is not, of course, that sometimes they target minorities. So that is a problem with people that are actually racist, cops that are racist. And another issue is the cops are not well trained. They're not well trained in America. Now, I'm not sure about Europe, but they seem to be less aggressive here. They seem to know how to handle the situation better. In America, sometimes there are instances where cops are panicking, and their training is very basic. Sometimes they go through a course of several weeks or a month, and they can become police officers, and that is not enough training. We need more training for police officers. Another thing I wanted to touch on is the political divide in America. It is large, and since Donald Trump came on the scene, it is wider than ever, the gap. So this is another issue in America, the political divide. The Congress and the Senate and the president are not getting along. They're not working as they should be. And we have Democrats on the left and we have Republicans on the right, and they're constantly infighting and they're not getting the job done, and they're name calling. And this has caused a lot of issues, especially with Donald Trump becoming president for the first time. It caused a lot of issues. Even families were broken up over this issue because they were so polarized. So politics is very polarizing in America. It is over the top. It is quite insane. It is kind of like America, over the top on everything. So this is a big issue in America now, and the government is not working as it should be. And now we have a president, Joe Biden, that is not even coherent. He has some kind of psychological issue or dementia, and that is causing a big issue in America because we may not be ready if we have to deal with a big issue in America, or a war, or something like a pandemic or something, because the president is not even, he seems to have lost his mental faculty. And again, people are divided, and they're even talking about replacing him now. So I don't want to get too political, but there is a big divide in America politically, and it is not, we need to come more together to the middle. It used to be more of a middle politics. Now it is very wide apart. We have people on the left, people on the right, and they are just constantly name calling and shouting, and nothing is getting done. So these are many of the reasons that I've left America. I believe that Europe is more peaceful. Their way of life is better, in my opinion. And I think a lot of Americans are starting to realize that, yes, America can be a good country, but it's not as good as it once was, I don't think. And it's starting to decline. I hope that things get fixed there, get rearranged. But for now, I'm happy in Europe, and I don't have any plans of returning to the United States. So people have asked about this video. Here it is. It may be controversial to some, but those are my thoughts. And you tell me below if you agree or you disagree with what I think. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.